Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, is a group so vicious and unmanageable that al-Qaeda expelled them in February of 2014. ISIS uses the ever-expanding safe haven straddling the Iraq-Syria border to pursue a regional Sunni caliphate. Originally intent on striking the regime in Damascus, ISIS has more frequently battled an array of Syrian opposition forces who in turn suspect ISIS of colluding with President Assad. Iraqis dominate ISIS leadership, operate robust local and international funding schemes, and lead several thousand foreign fighters from more than 70 countries in their assault on Iraq's Shiite-dominated government. What do these dramatic developments mean for an already volatile Middle East and the wider world?
The question the country has to think through is whether it's possible to effectively create an alternative government in Iraq without the acquiescence of Iran and the person who is really the key stakeholder now, I would say, who's the head of the Quds Force, Qasem Soleimani. Is it possible to think about pulling this country back together without Iran on that shit? And my answer would be no. That if you want to go it without Iran, you'll effectively cement the partition of Iraq without any hope worse of having a formula for over time pulling it back together.
You cannot make decisions regarding the two holiest places in Shia Islam by excluding the Iranians. You cannot make decisions regarding the country that's on their border by excluding Iran. Even though Iran is in every piece of U.S. policy, whether it be the nuclear issues, support to terrorism, energy security, economic issues, it's all out there. They have morphed from what we would call a terrorist group maybe as recently as 3 or 4 months ago into actually I would consider to be a terrorist army. So it's a problem like we haven't seen, quite frankly, since the towers went down in 9/11. I would offer this too, is that with this morphing, they also have demonstrated an extraordinary understanding of the use of propaganda in the modern world. They've done things with Twitter, with the internet, with all sorts of modern IT communication, which extends their ability to create fear and intimidation in ways that no other terrorist group, I think, has applied so far. I think they're way ahead of al-Qaeda. But of course, the question remains, how do you stop ISIL, since they're the ones that are actually generating this chaos and this crisis? This is my view. I would offer to you that ISIL is an evil force, and I would offer to you they can only be stopped by force. And I don't think they have any interest in negotiating in any way that makes sense to us in the 21st century. It's an extension of what we see in the post-9/11 environment.
Is it possible to do effective targeting? And the answer for the moment, I think, is no, but will soon be sort of. And so I think one reason that we're sending these additional advisors is to have people on the ground who can get the kind of information that's only available when you're there. It has been reported that we have so-called ISR surveillance resources in the air over the key parts of Iraq now, and so that tells you that given the extraordinary capabilities the U.S. has, better information is on the way. So if I was an ISIS cadre, I would not be sleeping well.
What accounts for the appeal of ISIS? If you're a Sunni in Iraq, it's pretty clear. Revenge against a Shia government that's alienated you, brought violence to your family. A lot of reasons. If you may be a purist and you believe in what ISIS says about reestablishing the Sunni Islamic caliphate, of bringing religion and the practice of Islam back to the time of the ancestors, the Salafs, then that's appealing to you. If you are a Sunni from other parts of the world, then you're a sectarian. It's the battle against the Shia. In a previous project, I was in Peshawar, Pakistan. I interviewed a leading journalist who said, don't forget what Zarqawi,
give me a Honey Island swamp with a boogaloo line right next to a kazoo, flavored with some bayou juice.
Wrote to him and said, stop killing Shia, stop beheading Americans, it's not good for public relations, etc. And he returned a message saying, Anti-Americanism
If
is
a
learned
bean is a
behavior.
bean, then what
If
is
you're a foreign
bean?
fighter, it's adventure. It's a legitimate jihad in the eyes of many people.
A good
It
relief.
gives you purpose.
Take me to Mr. Tucky's Funk House Disco, turn the siren on and let me bump a little protocol, y'all. Land me Dixie, y'all, to the hottest point. If a bean is a bean, then what is a pig?
Great counterterrorism
Take
tools
me
that the
to
United
the
States
hill
can
of
bring to the
Vulcan,
table around
god
the
of
world
steel,
is jobs.
sitting on the mountain of
I have a very
iron
strong
ore
belief
with stop
that
and go
jobs
light in his
and
hand.
things that we have done
The
here in our own
Vulcan,
country
the
make a
god of
significant
steel,
difference. Because I talk to young men, if they had a
facing
job and they had a sense they could support their family, raise their
But
children,
they
and
don't
actually make
dig in
something
that
of their lives,
Birmingham Hill
it becomes
no
more
more.
difficult for them to sit there and listen.
Give me
over a
2
period of
Honey
3 or 4
Island
nights in a
swamps,
row
3
to a
Peach
recruiter
Lakes, a
for
boarded
Al-Qaeda
up
or
cotton
now
gin,
ISIL.
and some moonshine is fine. Tuscaloosa, Boogaloosa, Yazoo, and Mobile
cannot
deal. Wait! Lolly Lee got her guitar, and here come Willie Mae. If a bean is a bean, then what
As
is
the
a pig?
immediate crisis ebbs, right now we've got a 3-alarm fire to put out, but as it ebbs, to lead a process drawing in key regional powers, balancing Saudi Arabia and Iran finally, so that this insane Sunni Shia fratricide will have an end. Bringing in permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council, all of whom have an interest in stopping this process of disintegration, and taking the lead in thinking, what's this part of the world going to look like under some new structure?
Without a political settlement or a progress on the political settlement, an attack alone can, on the ISIS can, there could be all kinds of complications that David talked about knowing where they are, how mixed they are with others, how urgent, where the target is.
Jackson, guitar. I'd like to thank you for
I
coming
believe
out.
that airstrikes alone can degrade the threat. They will not fundamentally change the situation. Marriage, the political said the people on their side to win against the extremists and terrorists, and then apply the military measure. But we all know, at least my judgment is, absent that, you would have a jury, if not de facto division, and instability for some time to come. And once you get into the programmatic of what it is that you're going to do, assuming a post-assessment, and the assessment comes, here is a kind of the military capability that exists that we could invest in and build up, and providing this capability, I'm putting on the table that assessment should include what are the local forces and elements that need to be taken into account, because in the first instance, if they switch from ISIS and work against ISIS, they, assuming the other things are in place, which is a big assumption, you would need people on the ground, because I agree with David that the central forces going back and taking all these places may be difficult. David has put some other option on the table, but putting that aside for the moment, one of the elements has got to be local forces, local leaders.
Regional powers, especially Jordan, are nervous about this open U.S. military involvement in their country, and would do it only if there's political cover that makes them feel comfortable. So I just would float the idea that for this stabilization force, and you could actually imagine a similar force going into the Sunni areas of Iraq. I mean, the idea that the Iraqi army is going to retake Mosul, I don't think that's going to happen, folks. But it's possible that some stabilization force working with tribal leaders could begin over time to bring a degree of stability.
What's up, babies? Your mate, Jen.
بقلب الخفاق وثرايا تنشر إيمانا ليعود إلى الحق صدوق ويذوق الذلة أعداء ويذوق الذلة.
طفل جاهل مرة اضربوه.
ليش؟
قلنا لهم يابا ليش؟ يقولون ذولا كلهم مسلحين ويقتلون بياهل يجي يقتلون يشوفونه قدامهم يقتلونه وناس مجرمين ويسموهم على اساس قوات داعش.
زين احنا قتلنا واحد اذا مو بحق؟
لا ما قتلت احد انتم.
مو قتلنا بس اللي يحاربنا؟
اي ما قتلت احد.
زين تتوقع احد يحاربنا راح ينجو؟
لا ما ينجو مستحيل.
باذن الله عز وجل.
باذن الله ما ينجو.
رسالة لك ولضباطك ولأعوانهم باذن الله عز وجل من الخونة ومن المرتزقة من اهل السنة ممن باعوا دينهم وباعوا اهلهم وعشائرهم لا يجدوا منا الا الذبح باذن الله. وابشروا بالاقتحامات والمفخخات والعبوات وابشروا بما يسوءكم.
عاشت دولة العراق الإسلامية. عاشت دولة العراق الإسلامية.
ذلك
نبالي بالأعادي ما نبالي وما تخوفنا الجيوش البربرية ما نبالي بالأعادي ما نبالي اسمنا الفتية كم سحقنا الكفر في ساح النزال تعرف الهايجة فوارسنا الفتية ناطحت هماتنا شم الجبال ومنحنت لحظة نواصينا الأبية ناطحت هماتنا شم الجبال ومنحنت لحظة نواصينا الأبية عاشقين الحرب حنا والقتال ومن تحدانا نجرع الدنية عاشقين الحرب حنا والقتال من تحدانا نجرع الدنية للمعدل في المعارك لحن حالي وفي الوغى محلى لحون المدفعية للمعدل في المعارك لحن حالي وفي الوغى محلى لحون المدفعية ما نفارق هالجعبه والأوالي والقنابل في أيادينا السخية ما نفارق هالجعبه والأوالي والقنابل في أيادينا السخية. اسألوا عن الثريا والهلالي وانشدوا عن عزنا كل البرية. اسألوا عن الثريا والهلالي وانشدوا عن عزنا كل البرية. شامخة راياتنا فوق العلالي والله أكبر في حمانا ذوت قوية. شامخة راياتنا فوق العلالي والله أكبر في حمانا ذوت قوية. يا منايا أقبلي هيا تعالي في سبيل الله مرحب بالمنية. يا منايا أقبلي هيا تعالي في سبيل الله مرحب بالمنية. لجل رب الكون نرخص كل غالي.
عائدون بإذن الله إلى فلوجة العز، فلوجة المجاهدين، فلوجة الشهداء، وينيبني شوق إليها كلما أهوالها في خاطري تستحضر. لن ننسين دماء إخوان بها، فلوجة الأبطال نعم المعشر. فلنلهبن الأرض كل بقاعها، بدمائنا حمما نثور ونثأر. ولنرجعن المجد فيها نقسم، ولنحكمن بشرعنا ولنظفر.
نبني المجد للأمة، طرق النصر تمطرنا بوبل هاطل غيما. ماضينا سنرجعنا ونبني المجد للأمة، طرق النصر تمطرنا بوبل هاطل غيما. فدين الله غايتنا فنرفع من به غمة، ونهج محمد فينا كصبح جاء في ظلنا. ماضينا سنرجعه ونبني المجد للأمة، طرق النصر تمطرنا بوبل هاطل غيما. سنرفعه ونعاليه ليصبح في ذرى القمة، ليأبى كل أفاك ووجه الشر ذا عتمة. أفيقوا من سباتكم وأحيوا مشاعرا هرمة، فبالإيمان والتوحيد نرفع للوغى علما.
وأننا اليوم في أحسن حال ولله الحمد والمنة. وأبشروا فإن أمامكم إن شاء الله أياما زرقاوية، تليها إن شاء الله فتوحات عمرية. أتظنون أننا سنرحل؟ أتخالون أننا سننتهي؟ أتحسبون أننا سنكل أو نمل؟ كلا، إننا باقون بإذن الله إلى قيام الساعة. وليقاتلن آخرنا الدجال، فسارعوا قبل أن تندموا، فإن المعركة محسومة.
ما هو اسمك؟
قيس خالد حسن.
ما هي الوحدة التي تداوم فيها؟
زوج مغاوير الفرقة الخامسة.
ما هو سبب قدومك للأنبار؟
قتال أهل السنة.
المنطقة التي تم اعتقالك فيها؟
منطقة النعيمية.
ماذا تقول لأذنابكم من الكفار المرتدين؟
اللي يبطلون من الجيش يدعون لأهاليهم وأحسنين.
ماذا تقول للمالكي؟
المالكي جاب من هذا المكان لا خير اليوم، لعنة الله عليه منه اليوم الدين.
تقول لأذنابكم من الكفار والمرتدين؟
والله أقول لهم يبطلون يرجع لأهاليهم أحسن سالمين، أحسن ما يرجعون توابيت.
ماذا تقول للمالكي؟
والله أحب أقول له حكاية، إذا هو ما يقدر يندق ما بالعالم الفلوجة تنطبق السماء على الأرض ما يقدر يطبقها. إن شاء
الله بإذن الله، بإذن الواحد الأحد. ليش جت الأنبار؟
قاتل السنة.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن والاه، أما بعد. قاتلوهم يعذبهم الله بأيديكم ويخزيهم وينصركم عليهم ويشفي صدور قوم مؤمنين. اللهم لك الحمد الذي عزنا بهذا النصر وأذل هؤلاء الكافرين بشركهم. فيقول النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم: لا يجتمع كافر وقاتله في النار أبدا. اللهم لا تجمعنا معهم في الدنيا ولا في الآخرة. اللهم قربة إليك ودفاعا عن دينك ودفاعا عن السنة والجماعة يا رب. نتقرب بهم إليك يا رب. فتقبل قربانك يا رب، تقبل منا يا رب، تقبل منا. بسم الله. اللهم يا رب اجعلها خالصة لوجهك، اللهم اجعلها شهادة لنا عندك يوم القيامة. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: لا يجتمع كافر وقاتل في النار أبدا. اللهم لا تجمعنا معهم في الدنيا والآخرة. بسم الله.
They've had a great string of successes, and now they're going to be encountering far more resistance than they have in the past.
How risky is this in terms of?
And what I dislike is that, well, it's simply not discussed that this is something like a violation of Syria, and that Syria has the right to decide if someone wants to help them against the terrorist. And by the way, these terrorists have been installed in Syria to attack and to get rid of Assad. These are the enemies, the installed enemies of Bashar al-Assad, and now America is taking out exactly the same enemies they have installed. And they have given the weapons to not only the moderate rebels or the moderate terrorists, which are pretty much not existing at all, they've already directly trained and supported with help of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, and even the Israeli secret services, the things, or that's at least the thing which is reported from many media channels of the alternative media branch. They have trained and supported the enemy. They simply right now attack, which is pure arrogance.
The risks to, for example, fight.
And it's arrogance not to ask or not to peace deal Assad, not to even give the political stage to Assad is a non-go. It's very evil. It's a very evil foreign policy. It's not respectful at all, because it's America's fault that ISIS has taken the Iraqi land. They sold the weapons. Even American weapon makers sold it to Saudi Arabia. The Saudis delivered and funded and sponsored it. And also in Iraq, they have simply left all the weapons inside there. Even the failed foreign policy of America and of Iraq, now they simply attack. It's like America is flexing its muscles, and without any involvement of international law, and even without a clear coalition mandate, without an international, and without a mandate of the Russians, or of the Chinese, or of the Syrians, or of the Iranians, which are in the end the ones who need to decide what is going to happen. And America cannot simply attack because someone is beheading something like, and who has already directly been sold from the so-called moderate rebels, which now are armed again, and then has been sold to ISIS, and the Turks are pretty much behind every step of it, and they are really getting all the terror people inside there, and they have helped ISIS, and now they attack, the Americans attack it, and so that's a very, very crucial thing there. And some would even say it's the start of the World War III. I wouldn't go so far, but I think it's a very, very obvious escalation, and a very dangerous escalation.
That was one of the concerns, wasn't it, when all this was announced? I mean, presumably it was decided that this part of Syria, around Raqqa in the east, is relatively safe. And I'm thinking, of course, from the threat from Syrian air defences. All was some deal done with the Syrian government?
Well,
so that's now the crucial question, and I hope I didn't mess it, and so maybe I now get the information I would have had before if I would have made a concept or something like that in this video. But anyway, I'm sorry for that if I now get the information which will relativate my analysis I've done until now.
Syria's reaction is, on the one hand, they would...
I just will rewind it.
Tricky is this in terms of the risks to, for example, fighter jets operating over Syria? I mean, that was one of the concerns, wasn't it, when all this was announced? I mean, presumably it was just...
And it's not only a concern, you need to involve Germans if you try to bomb Berlin. You need to involve the Brits and the British Parliament if America or anyone else wants to target Wales or Scotland. You need to involve the country's leadership, even if you deny and have already announced that Assad should leave inside Syria, the office, because he's not legitimate, because he has done the civil war thing, and so you don't think Assad is a legitimate leader. But you need to deal with the Syrians, and with the Russians, and with the Iranians.
Yeah. Around Raqqa in the east.
And for sure, you also need to deal with the Turks. You need to solve the Kurdistan strategical problem. Then you need to have them. It needs to be a very clear strategy, and this strategy needs to be communicated from my viewpoint. That's what Obama didn't do.
Of course, from the threat from Syrian air defense, is always some deal done with the Syrian government.
Well, it will be interesting to see what Syria's reaction is.
And so they didn't react. And so what he's saying there, that the Americans may have had something like the knowledge, and so I wasn't wrong in that. The Americans may have given something from Assad like indirect tolerance or something, according to that. That's my suggestions. Or they think, what could Assad have against this? Because if Raqqa is falling back to him then later on, but what's happening now? What is going to happen if Assad says, well, this is my country and now I attack Raqqa, I take it back? And so what would do the Americans do then? Have they coordinated it, and wouldn't that be a danger that simply the Syrian army is now moving forward? What is going to happen in the next weeks? You need to deal with Assad if you want to do something like this, because it's a legitimate right from Assad's viewpoint and from the Syrian Arabic army that they get back the rest of their country. And so if you don't deal and negotiate with Assad, whom do you help then? So the Americans now help Assad to get back the rest of the country, and wouldn't the Sunni people inside Syria hate him for that? And what is with the Sunni enemies of Assad in Turkey and in the refugee camps? This sounds a little creepy and crazy then, the whole development there. If it's not dealt and negotiated with the Assad government. And it's a very clear proof of America's, we do what we want for whatever kind of price and reason. And there may be a good reason, but no one knows this reason. And at least these guys from BBC don't communicate it. And I guess they don't know it because they have not been told.
One hand, and they voiced concern about other countries undertaking military operations inside their borders without their permission. They're probably delighted to have the international community take this action against the Islamic State. I suspect they'll try to use this for their own propaganda value and suggesting that the region and the United States are now allies. It's not true.
Yeah, but would they have the right to now use this for their own purpose? I mean, Assad has now his own enemies because he has been destabilized by the American, and John McCain has supported these guys. There are clear pictures in the internet still found where John McCain has visited the same people, maybe not exactly the same people, but those guys who then converted to the ISIS thing, who Americans have supported with weapons. And the Saudis and the Qataris and the Turks have supported all day long before they conquered Iraq and they founded their own state. Before they have done that, America has been an ally of ISIS against Assad. And now Assad is not asked. And so what could he say then? I mean, he doesn't even know if America is an ally of him, because America is simply going in there for whatever reason.
Provide a propaganda opportunity. Sure, I think. And
no word has been spoken about the right, the Constitution of America, and the foreign policy strategy. That's BBC Live, I guess.
Have forces in the region, and they probably just stayed out of the way and to let this operation take place. But obviously, if this continues and intensifies and broadens throughout greater areas of Syria.
Exactly, and so what could they do then? I mean, Assad should give the allowance. And did they do it for Assad? And what is the consequence for that, according to the image of the Americans? Are they not even more reason deliverers for terrorist attacks, which they have known? America has known that they will pull itself into into a terror war again. And that's the main goal of it. The whole function is to establish surveillance, militarization, and other things. And that's what the military industry complex in America and in Europe wants. And so they totally reach their goals. And Obama is simply playing into their hands if he is not even now part and totally agreeing with that foreign policy, military industry agenda, if you like. It's not, if you like, it's not even a foreign policy of America anymore. It's a foreign policy of some military industry companies. So they are now in charge with Obama.
How important is it? We don't know exactly the level of involvement from those other countries that Barbara mentioned, but several Arab countries. I mean, is that just symbolic, or do you think it's a little more than that?
I think what's remarkable here is how public it is already and will become in the coming hours. At the heart of this conflict is a civil war within Islam, and obviously the major Sunni powers in the region have taken decisive action against the Islamic State. We'll see how the governments react, how they explain what they've done, how their populations react. But obviously public opinion will be critically important in trying to narrow the oxygen that's available to the Islamic State. The Islamic State has benefited in recent months because, for example, within the Sunni community in Iraq, they look at the Islamic State, they look at a Shia-led government, and they see the Islamic State as being the lesser of two evils. Ultimately, the Sunnis within the region.
And still, no word to the consequences of simply declaring a war against any kind of international law. And as I've said, according to the Ukraine many times, the foreign policy of nations like America, they are not connected and related to anything like the typical law situation as it has been before. And I guess I will get some breakfast now. And so I will finish my short morning video here according to the situation in the... Oh, I pretty look very tired today. Anyway. And excuse my tired, bad impression I will give to you. Anyway, the Syrians normally have the right to be asked. It's an obligation to not act unilaterally according to a sovereign nation like Syria. Syria is more or less sovereign, it's split, and so the Americans, they simply even didn't take care about anything other nations are expected from themselves to care about. So America expects Russia to do like this and this and this, and other nations to care about international law, and these countries care about international law. They argue, they reason, they justify themselves, and they are still painted and bashed, as Russia, for example, at the moment is bashed, is painted as a very evil nation, and Putin as someone who breaks international law, who has annexed Crimea, who has invaded in the East Ukraine, which he didn't in Crimea, which he didn't in the east of the Ukraine, and America simply goes in there. That's totally irresponsible. It's totally impossible normally. America has no light, I guess. There is no light in their foreign policy from my viewpoint, so they're not really enlightened, if you like, and they're not really acting in the light. They are acting somehow in the dark field of violation of international law. That's a very evil, dark acting of America, and it may even serve a positive goal, protecting the Kurds. But it's not debated. At least BBC didn't report that they did it because they need to protect for humanitarian reasons. So even that is not rolled out. And so why and how is this justified? Because Barack Obama has told that he wanted to do something like this. Did Congress really authorize him? Is the legal foundation and base there? I guess Barack Obama is violating even the American Constitution, and as many have told now many times, there will be one point of time, at one point of time, they will go and impeach him for things like this, because he is acting without any concrete, strategical and legal basis. There is no legal basis to attack a foreign nation like Syria. You need to act in coordination and negotiation, from my viewpoint, with Bashar al-Assad, even if you don't like him. Also for the main practical reason that Bashar al-Assad has now the right to simply go after al-Raqqa. What is now happening? I mean, if Obama is simply doing it as some kind of military service deliverance for the Syrian Air Force, that's a nice move. But Assad should have said, well, that's cool, thanks for that. And so normally they should have concretely argued and diplomatically have rolled this out. And maybe it's even a deal from the behind, or maybe even Obama is using something like a strategy which would be most likely be described as something you're forced by outer circumstances to have the right to argue, to do something which you normally couldn't do because there is a very huge pressure inside your own government against it. So Obama is maybe even enabling himself to attack ISIS in Syria to get the legal justification, to get into a little diplomatic trouble, to then have the legal need and necessity to act together with Assad. So he's somehow enabling himself by creating a little chaos to be able to negotiate with Assad, which he didn't had before. Why? Because he has already framed Assad as someone who is not the legal leader of Syria. So it could even be good that America has done so, because Obama would simply move forward and would say, okay, I solve it now like this, because I couldn't have done it different if I would have openly negotiated this. My own backing, the administration, the military industry, and those who never accept a deal with Assad, who never accept a deal with Iran, would have been too precious against my own foreign policy. So it could be somehow like a tricky way to move yourself in a little mess, and then to be enabled to solve the mess with the agreement of those who want to negotiate with under any circumstance, or if it's necessary. And now it is more necessary. Now there needs, for at least in my understanding, there's a possibility and the need to negotiate with Assad. And so it would be even a self-opened win-win-win situation now if Obama can switch the whole thing, then that he has a real common ground to negotiate with Assad. And so he could even really solve and help to solve the civil war thing in Syria itself. And so it could be a good thing, but Obama now needs to talk with Assad. If he doesn't do so, this may really cause very big trouble then for America. What kind of trouble you may even imagine when now the Syrian army tried to take back the places where Assad has been pulled out from ISIS. And so Obama now clearly creates an enemy with ISIS. He's now even going after their last hidden places. So ISIS is, from my viewpoint, very clearly trying to do attacks if the Americans are not in control of all of it. And so they pretty much can hinder most of the attacks, the terror attacks, the retaliation attacks. But if the whole thing is destroyed and split there, well, how much likely will you get terrorist attacks then? With a high possibility, because it's a declaration of war from their viewpoint against Islam, even if they are isolated in a way, because also some Sunni or most Sunni communities have separated and distanced themselves from ISIS. Under any circumstance, it needs to be said that now the danger is, and it's a danger and it's a chance in there, the danger is, from my viewpoint, that the whole thing, that Assad will try to take back Raqqa. And why shouldn't he do so? Raqqa is his military base, and so he's going possibly with ground troops now. Or is he asking the Americans, does he need the allowance of the Americans, or do the Americans need the allowance of and the green light if they want to fight an enemy which is also an enemy of Assad? And now you see how complicated that is. And now you see how much needed it is that America is doing a different kind of foreign policy, which is leaving the arrogance path, even if in this case it could be worked out in a good way. And normally you would say that's an absolute no-go. Imagine the Chinese attacking something in Taiwan because they from their own viewpoint, even if they also financed and equipped and educated the terrorists of Taiwan, if they would attack some terrorists in Taiwan, or would have done so some decades ago. Taiwan is a bad example, but if they would attack some enemies in Japan, for example. Some right-wing Japanese who see China as the big enemy and who always who say they want to do terror attacks and possibly would have killed some Chinese in Japan. So China would have the right to go into the Japanese country and attack these terrorists with its Chinese Air Force? They wouldn't. The Russians, from their viewpoint, would they now have the right to strike in the Ukraine if the Russians are attacked again, which many Russians in Russia, and Russia has demanded from many points coming from its president, from Putin. Is Putin now also enabled to act like the Americans do? I guess Russia will not do so, because they at least try as much as they can, if there is not a higher priority in principle, which they need to also take care about. They at least try to care about the international law. So greetings and blessed day here from Wilhelmshaven and Friesland, and see you. And this is how it looks today here in our Frisian northern coast region. And I guess it's not such a big deal. This Third World War community is not precise and not right with that from my viewpoint. It's not the beginning of the Third World War. This World War is already there from many people's viewpoint, and it's a silent start, if you like. It's a very slow move into this Third World War. And if you look how long the whole region is burning and is inflamed, you then see that the Syrians, they have this kind of war for 3 years now. And, well, as I've said before, the Iranians also have entered this kind of war when they supported Bashar al-Assad in Syria against ISIS. So now we see the alliance and the possibility of an alliance with Assad and with Tehran, or at least the acceptance, I guess. When John Kerry has made a talk with the Iranians in Tehran, he got somehow the assurance, or somehow the feeling, or the inner knowledge, or even the concrete knowledge that the Syrian Arabic army, that Assad would not hinder Obama. So I guess when John Kerry met in Tehran, the Foreign Policy Department and the Foreign Minister of Iran, there is some indirect agreement, and also they have